I can identify there's a negative pathway, something like I'm not good enough,
Yes.
and it's bleeding into my life, then I really got to pick up the sled. I just can't keep going down that path because it's automatic.
Yeah.
It comes without any invitation, without any effort, without any earning.
Yeah.
So we have to pick up the sled, and then we have to do the work of forging a new path.
Yes.
And we can get into the details of what
Yes.
does that look like? How do we do that? But to me, the most encouraging thing of that, because we're not just talking about spiritual truth, we're also talking about brain health.
Yes.
And so when the scientific term is neuroplasticity, which is a great big old word, but it basically just means that the brain can change.
Yeah.
And there's so much hope in that,
Yeah,
that
yes.
God has made our brains to be able to adapt.
Yes.
If we think his way.
Yes.
Thinking
Yes.
his way is the key. The original Hebrew of the word think means to set your mind to. Meaning it's an active, it's something we can't be passive in. We have to really do the work of getting into the sled and creating a new pathway and knowing that we change the brain and that neuroplasticity. So when I was in graduate school, this was a long, long time ago. When I was in graduate school.
No, come on. It was a few years ago.
Yeah, well, it was a few decades ago. But if we were learning about a stroke victim and neuroscience, for instance, the understanding at that time was that someone who has a stroke that impacts a certain area of their brain, that they lose functioning in that area, whether it be a physical or a cognitive impact. And that's just how it was.
Yeah.
And now we know that is not the case, that they can develop new pathways.
Yes.
And so it's like for a stroke victim, it's like as if I-26 fell off the face of the planet, but there's still a way to get from Asheville to Hendersonville, for instance.
Yeah.
And this same thing is true if I identify that I have a negative thought. And it is not serving a purpose. It is destructive in every area of my life. Then by God's grace, if we don't keep fertilizing that thing, then it's going to begin pruning away.
Yes.
And we can develop a new pathway based on truth.
So how can you encourage someone who is afraid of the work, who has given up hope? Can you encourage that person to get on this with you to discover what these pathways are?
Yeah, first I would just say you have the freedom not to. You know, where you are in this struggle, this is familiar. It's predictable. You know what that is like. So you have the freedom to stay there. But then also just to consider, what would it hurt for me to do the work? How could that look on the other side? And I'll just tell you, because I've been doing this for decades, I have seen lives transformed. I've seen depression released, addictions released, marriages that I never thought would survive. God can do anything that he wants to do. But I do think that oftentimes he starts with the brain and with our thoughts. And with those areas that go under the radar.
So how do we follow God in managing our thoughts?
And this is always such a tricky place, because as followers of Christ, which many of your listeners are, we know that submitting to him, that is what our Christian walk is all about, right?
Yes.
We're submitting in agreement with him about who he is, about who we are in him, about what he wants to accomplish with the life he's created in us. And so I think, though, sometimes there's little pieces that we want to grab hold of, though, that we want to keep ourselves. And there are some really hard spots of life, and we often may feel like we're just a puppet, that I'm just submitting to him and he's in control of all of this. At least I can keep my own thoughts about things, you know? And that's where I say, actually, no, we don't even have the right to our thoughts. We are to submit those to him. And as we do, he brings them from the subconscious to the conscious. And then we can look at them for what they really, really are and dissect them. And to discern truth, discern the deception in it. But God will reveal them because he does know our thoughts. And because of his love for us and his desire that we submit all of these to him, he's going to reveal them so that then we have the leverage to take the next step.